If you are new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our emotional and heart-touching C-drama stories. Now sit back, relax, and let's dive into one of the most unforgettable stories that shook fans across the world. The night was calm, the studio lights were dim, and the air carried a strange sense of tension. Joseph Zeng sat quietly at the edge of the stage, his script lying untouched beside him. For years he had held his silence, burying emotions that only deepened each time he saw Bai Lu smile. To everyone else, they were just colleagues, two professionals sharing the same screen, creating magic together. But behind those scenes, something deeper had always been burning. It all began years ago when they met on the set of their first drama together. She had just stepped onto the scene, bright and full of energy, while he was calm, collected, and quietly charming. Their chemistry was undeniable, and even the director paused several times to watch them rehearse, whispering that something about the two felt too real to be fiction. Fans noticed it immediately, the way Joseph's eyes softened whenever Bai Lu laughed, the way she would glance at him during interviews when she thought no one was watching. But what fans didn't know was that off-screen, something was quietly unfolding. They grew close, spending long nights practicing lines and sharing meals between shoots. Bai Lu would tease him for being too serious, and he would simply smile, watching her with that same look that seemed to hold 1,000 unsaid words. Yet, the moment their fame began to rise, they both decided to keep their distance. They told themselves it was for their careers, that feelings would fade with time. But for Joseph, time only made everything harder. Years passed, and both of them continued to rise in the industry, starring in different dramas, often opposite other leads. Yet every time Joseph was asked in interviews about his ideal type, his answer never changed. He always said he admired someone strong, independent, but with a soft heart underneath. Fans knew he was describing Bai Lu without saying her name, and every time he spoke, her name trended again. But still, he remained silent about the truth. Then came that one evening, during a live event that changed everything. Bai Lu was seated beside him, both of them invited as guests for an award show. As the host asked Joseph about his most unforgettable co-star, he hesitated. For the first time, his calm composure broke, and his voice grew softer. He said, "There was someone who taught me what real connection means, but I was too afraid to tell her then." The room went quiet. Even Bai Lu froze. Her eyes widened, and her smile faded slightly as she turned toward him. The crowd could feel the emotion in his words, the unspoken truth that filled the space between them. After the event, rumors spread wildly online. Some said he had confessed his feelings publicly, while others believed it was just part of a performance. But behind closed doors, something far more emotional happened. Later that night, Joseph found Bai Lu standing alone outside the venue. She was quiet, the cold night air brushing through her hair as she looked up at the city lights. He walked toward her slowly, his heart pounding. For years, he had rehearsed what he would say if this moment ever came, but now, standing before her, the words felt heavy. "I didn't say your name," he whispered, "but everyone knew, didn't they?" She turned to him, her eyes glistening. "You shouldn't have said anything at all," she replied softly. "You know how this industry works. People twist everything." "I know," he said, "but I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I waited for the right time and it never came. I waited for years, Bai Lu." Her eyes fell to the ground, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence carried all the weight of what they could have been, all the years they had spent apart for the sake of their careers. She finally whispered, "You were always there, weren't you?" "I never left," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I saw you at every event, every premiere, but you were always too far away. I kept thinking maybe one day we'd finally be free enough to just talk like this." Tears welled in her eyes, and she looked away, trying to hide them. "We were young," she said, "and we made choices that felt right back then. Maybe it was for the best." "But what if it wasn't?" he asked. "What if we let go of something that was supposed to last?" The night grew colder, and yet neither moved. For a moment, the city seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the echo of years lost to silence. Bai Lu finally smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both pain and gratitude. Maybe, she whispered, we were never meant to end. Maybe we were just meant to pause. From that night onward, something shifted. They didn't make any public statement, but the warmth between them began to show again. Fans noticed the way they smiled at each other in interviews, the gentle glances, the quiet moments that felt like confessions without words. It wasn't about fame anymore. It wasn't about the cameras or the roles they played. It was about two souls who had found their way back to each other, slowly and silently. Months later, Joseph gave another interview, and when asked what love meant to him now, he paused before answering. Love, he said, is waiting without knowing if the other person will ever come back, but believing that one day, they will. The interviewer smiled, but fans knew that line wasn't just poetry. It was truth. The truth of a man who had waited all these years for the one person who never truly left his heart. Bai Lu, too, seemed softer in her own interviews. When asked about love, she smiled and said, sometimes the heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. Some people never really go away. The moment those words aired, the internet went wild. Fans flooded social media with clips of their past dramas together, comparing scenes that now carried a deeper meaning. Some said fate had reunited them, others said they had simply grown into the right time for each other. But one thing was certain, the emotion between them was real, raw, and unforgettable. In the end, Joseph's confession became more than just a story of love. It became a reminder that some connections never fade no matter how much time passes. Sometimes, love is not about grand gestures, but about patience, hope, and the quiet belief that one day, destiny will give you another chance. The night had fallen quiet over the city, the air carrying a stillness that felt almost sacred. Bai Lu stood near the studio window, staring out at the faint city lights reflecting on the glass. Her phone lay on the table beside her, screen still glowing with Joseph Zeng's last message. He had finally said what he had carried in silence for years. His confession had spread like wildfire, but it wasn't the media that moved her. It was the sincerity in his voice, the way his words sounded less like a celebrity statement and more like a whisper from an old memory that refused to fade. For a long time, Bai Lu couldn't speak. She remembered the early days when they were still figuring out their dreams, when laughter came easy, when success seemed far away but possible if they held on tight enough. She remembered the way Joseph used to stand quietly behind the cameras, always waiting, always watching. The next day, she arrived at the rehearsal hall earlier than anyone else. She wanted silence, she wanted space, but fate had other plans. The door opened behind her and his reflection appeared in the mirror, Joseph, standing just as he had years ago, calm but carrying the weight of everything unsaid. Their eyes met. No one else was in the room. Why now? She asked softly, her voice trembling but steady. Joseph looked at her, his expression both gentle and broken. Because waiting was easier than losing hope, he said. But I realized I've been waiting for something that might never return. I just needed you to know before I let it go. Bai Lu turned away for a moment, blinking back tears that refused to fall. You should have told me sooner, she whispered. We lost so much time. He smiled faintly. You were chasing your dreams. I didn't want to be the reason you slowed down. For a moment, the air felt heavy, not with regret, but with understanding. Two hearts that had once moved in the same rhythm, now standing side by side, no longer bound by what-ifs, but by acceptance. Bai Lu stepped closer and took his hand. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't an ending either. It was simply a gesture that said thank you for waiting, thank you for loving silently. That moment, unseen by cameras and unheard by fans, became the quiet closure both of them needed. Later that night, Bai Lu posted something on her private page, a line that fans would later quote for months. Sometimes, love isn't about holding on. It's about finally letting each other breathe. Joseph saw it, smiled, and turned off his phone. He walked out into the street, the city lights shimmering softly around him, no longer waiting, no longer searching, just grateful. And that was how it ended. Not with a grand reunion, not with dramatic tears, but with peace. In the years that followed, both Bai Lu and Joseph continued their journeys, occasionally crossing paths at award shows and industry events. Each time, their eyes met with a silent respect that only those who've shared unspoken love could understand. And though fans still whispered about the two of them, hoping for a miracle, they both knew something deeper. Some stories are beautiful not because they end in forever, but because they teach us how to love without expectation. So when Joseph stood on stage years later, accepting an award for his performance, he ended his speech with a line that made the entire hall fall silent. To the one who taught me patience, kindness, and courage, thank you for existing. Bai Lu, watching from her seat in the audience, smiled quietly. She didn't clap immediately. Instead, she pressed her hand over her heart, knowing that some bonds never fade, they simply change form. The crowd roared with applause, and the lights dimmed slowly. Their story had ended, not in tragedy, not in loss, but in peace. A love that waited, a love that endured, and a love that finally learned to let go. Speech balloon. If you made it to the end of this story, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more powerful C-drama stories like this one. Sparkling heart. Every story we share brings us closer to the emotions behind fame, love, and destiny. Stay tuned for the next video. Bai Lu's letter to Joseph Zeng, the message that changed everything.